Welcome to SkewbSchool, and this episode I will be showing you some easy one-look cases. So with these cases, two corners will always stay in the same place after doing the layers. For example, here, these two corners are now solved, and after doing the layer, they will also be solved. So these cases will be showing you these corners. Welcome to SkewbSchool, and this episode I will be showing you some easy one-look cases. So with these cases there will always be two corners that stay in the same position after doing the layer. So here we can see these two corners are solved, and when we do the layer they will stay in the same place. So that means that we don't have to track any corners, and we can just immediately see what corners we are going to get. So we'll start off with this case. So it's a pretty easy one, because it's actually just executing a sledge, but from a different angle, from this angle. So all the pieces just move like a sledge. So if you know it, so these two swap and these two will swap. So it's pretty easy to recognize. This one stays solved, these two swap, and these two swap. And what's also nice about this, the mirror, so when the corners are twisted the other direction, the centers will move the same, and the same corners will move the same. So when you know it for one layer, you also know it for the other one, for the mirror. So now we'll go into some examples. So I just set up some random scrambles. So here we know these two corners will stay in the same position, and in this case they are already solved, so we are going to get centers only solved. And then we are going to trace the centers. So we know this one stays in the same place, so the U center stays in the back. These two swap, so this one will come over here. It's an opposite. This one will come over here, and this opposite will move away from the center, and these two will swap. So this will come down to here, be an opposite. So I have two opposite ones and a solved one in the back. And with these two solves, it means that we have an L5C to this case. And now we have the next case. So here you immediately look at the corners that will stay in the same place. So it means you have a peanut with the U curves over here. We look at the back. This one will stay here, and the U center will come over here, and this one will move over here. So what we see, the U center here, and these two move in this direction, and this one will swap over here and will also move towards the center. So we will have a swirl perm, and for this case it would move over to here. So we'll have this case. Welcome to SkewbSchool, and this episode I will be showing you some easy one-look cases. So cases where two corners stay in the same place after doing the layer. So what is really helpful, because you don't have to trace any corners, and you can just see what the corners are going to be by looking at these corners. So the first case I'm going to show is this case. So this case is actually performing a sledge, but from a different angle from this side. So all the pieces move in the same way as a sledge. So you might already know how they move. So these two swap and these two swap. So when you see it from this angle, these two swap and these two swap. So it's just like doing a sledge. And these corners stay in the same place, and this one stays in the back. So it's pretty easy to one look. And for this layer you can either execute it from this angle or from this angle like a sledge. But in most cases it will be faster to do it from this angle, because otherwise you have to do an awkward rotation to get back to this layer. What's also nice about this case is its mirror is actually completely the same as the normal one. So when you can one look this one, it's just the same for the mirror. So now I'll show you some examples. So we start off with this one. So we have this layer, so we know these two stay in the same position, and these are solved, so we only have to solve the corners after the layer. And then we look at the back. This one stays in the same position, then these two swap, so the U center comes over here, and this one moves over here and goes here. And then we see these two swap, and this one will be solved. So we have U-center here, solved here. These two will swap, and these two will swap. So that means that we have this case. And then we have another scramble. So we look at the corners and see who have peanut with the headlights over here. And then we look at the corners. This one stays here. These two swap, so we have an opposite here, and this one moves to here. And the U-center comes to here, so we know you have U-center here, opposite here, no opposite here, or no opposite here. So we have a watt perm, so we have this case. So here is the next case. As we can see, this case is symmetrical, so that means that we can either execute the layer from this side as from this side. So first way to execute is like this, but we can also do the mirror, and that would go like this. That also means that you can one look it in two ways. You can one look it when you move it like this, or when you move like this, and they will both be the same. So as you can see, I set it up this one to execute it like this, and this one to execute like this. And what we see is now when we do this one, the solved corners stay on this side, and we execute like this, the corners will stay on this side. So whenever we get this case, we can one look it in two ways. So when the corners stay here or here, so the centers then move like this, the solved center stays here, and these two swap, and these two swap. And for the mirror, of course, this one stays solved, and these two swap, and these two swap. And what's also handy is when these corners are twisted in the other direction, all the other pieces move the same way. So here these corners also say these two swap and these two swap. So it's just like executing this one. It's like executing the mirror of this one. So if you execute like this, it will be solved. So now I will show you some cases, some examples. So here we see we have this case, and when we would one look it, we would see here these two corners stay in the same place when we execute a layer like this. So we know we have solved corners, and then we start tracing the pieces. So we see these two swap and these two swap. So that means we have a swirl perm. So we have this case, which is pretty bad. So when we see that, we can move on to the other case. So we see the solved center stays in the back, these two swap and these two swap, and that means that now we have pi plus swirl perm. So that is also not that good. So this one would stay pretty bad either way. So now we have another case. We have this one. So this one is one look the same way as the other example. So these two corners stay the same when we move this one. So we trace the pieces. We see this one is solved. These two swap, so we have an opposite here, and this one will move to the top, and we have a swap here. So that means that we have a triple sledge case here, like this. And then we would look the mirror. So we see we have all the corners here, so we have peanut with the U cores here. These two swap, so we see the U center will be solved and this one will be solved. So that notes that we are having a pure peanut. So the next case is this one. So we have a diagonal layer and the pieces are like this. And what we can do is insert them in 3 moves. And it's also pretty easy to one look because these two corners stay in the same place. This center stays in the same place and this one stays in the same place. So we just have to one look a U-perm. So here's the opposite one. It moves to here like this. So we have solved corners here. These two are solved and just a U-perm. So this one is pretty easy to one look. So now we'll go to some examples. So what we see here, these corners stay in the same place. So we have a peanut with the U cores here. This one stays in the same place, and this one stays in the same place. And then we see the U center will come over here, this one moves over here, so you have an opposite, and this one moves to here, and we have another opposite. So that means that we have an peanut plus X-perm, so it would be pretty easy. Now we'll move on to the next example. So here we see we also have peanut, and we see this, the U center is solved, and we have an opposite here, so now we will trace the other pieces. So you see the opposite will come over here, so we have a solved center here. We have a solved center here, U center is solved, and an opposite here, we know we have a U-perm. So we have, in this case. So the next case is also a tree mover. So it's when the corners are here and here and you have a diagonal clear. So we can bring this corner up and insert it, and insert then that one. Or we can also execute it like this, depending on the alg we get afterwards. So here the corners in the back stay the same. So we have the corners are here, these ones stay in the same place. And then for the centers, we also have just the U-perm. So this one in the back stays solved, and the U center also stays solved. And the pieces move like this. The opposite moves towards here. Now we have a U-perm like that. So two solved ones here, and a U-perm like this, with the corners in the back solved. So I do an example. So on white we have the case, and then we look at the corners. So the one in the back stay the same, and we see that we have a solved center here. And then we look further and we see this will move oppositely, and because it's solved it will become an opposite one, and this one moves towards here. So that means that we have a triple sledge case, because it's the only possibility when you have a solved center here, opposite here, U center here, because this one will move towards here and also be an opposite. So we now have a pure triple sledge case. So here's a next example. So we have the case on white, and we look at the corners. So we see we have a peanut case with the U corners here. The top center is solved, and this one in the back will move towards here. And then we look at the other center, so we see this one will move towards here. So they move both like this, and here's an opposite one. So that means this one will also be solved, and we have a U-perm. So we have this case. So the next case, this one we have a diagonal layer, and the other pieces are right here. A lot of people would solve this case by inserting this corner into here and then inserting this corner in 4 moves. But what's actually better and easier to one look is when you solve it like this. So you bring this corner up and then insert it like this. And it's easy to one look, because these corners here stay in the same place, and also these corners stay in the same place, and we have an O-perm right here. So these stay in the same place, these corners stay in the same place, and we have an O-perm. So now I'll show some examples. So over here we see these corners stay in the same place, so I have peanut with the U colors here. Here we have a center, an opposite one. When we trace the pieces, this one will come down here, will also be an opposite one. This one will move towards here, so we have an X-perm with the U center here and the opposites here, which means we have this layer to sledge hedge. So that's pretty easy. And here we have the next one. So these two corners, these centers stay in the same place, and the corners stay in the same place. We have a pie with the headlights over here. These two are staying in the same place. This one moves down, and the U center is here. So we have headlights here, the U center here, and these two are solved. So I have this one, which is kind of bad, because when you do a hedge here, you have to do an awkward rotation with the U-perm. What you can actually do is do a U-perm from this side, and then you can solve that one with the hedge. So the next two cases are for this layer case. You have a diagonal layer, and these two are like this. So if you put this one in here, it's twisted. And for this case, there actually are two layer solutions where two corners stay in the same place. So we have this one, and this one you do a sledge here, and then you have these two mover left, and the other one is when you do a hedge in this position. So it's basically, for this case, doing a hedge here to get a two mover, and the other one is doing a sledge here and get a two mover. So for this case, the corners here stay in the same place, and the pieces move like this. This one stays in the same place, and we have a two swap here and a two swap here. So these corners stay, solved one, these two swap, and these two swap. And for the case where you do a sledge here, these two stay in the same place, and the center are a bit more difficult to one look because they move like a swirl. So the U center moves up here, this one moves over here. So we have a whole cycle of the pieces moving. So this can be a bit harder to one look. So we'll start off with some examples. So over here, we are going to do the hedge here and the sledge here. So what we see, we have these corners here. So we have a solved one and another one here. So we have peanut with the headlights over here. And then we look at this piece, and it stays in the same place and it moves to here. And then we have a two swap over here. So the U center will come over here, and this one will move to the top. And when we see that this one moves towards the U center moves to the top, and this one moves over here, we know we have a swirl perm where the pieces move like this. So in this case, it means that we have the U center here, and the pieces move like this. And that means it's a pretty easy case. This one, it's a pretty easy alk. You do this back move, do a sledge here, and either do a hedge here, but end up with doing the last move with an R2, or bring it down. So it would be a pretty easy solve. And then the next one over here, we are going to do a sledge here, and then do the two mover. So what we see, these corners are solved, and we will start over here because this one moves to the top. So this one moves to the top, then this will move down, and we have a solved one. This one will move towards here, and it will be an opposite. This one moves towards here, and we have another solved one. So we have two solved ones and an opposite here. So that means that we have a vertical U-perm over here with the opposite one here and the U center here. So when we do the sledge, you get this two mover, and then we have a U-perm.